Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar Everything You Need to Know About Google Tag Manager version 2. As we all know that there is a new interface of Google Tag Manager which has come up, which is said to be as a version 2 of Google Tag Manager. This new interface of Google Tag Manager is designed to make the work more easier and more intuitive. While the new interface is quite cool, there are few changes that user needs to be aware of before migrating to version 2. In this webinar, Phil will share you with everything you need to know about Google Tag Manager version 2. So let me introduce to myself. I am Bhumika Joshi and I am working as an implementation specialist at Tatvic. We have with us Phil Pearce. Phil is an independent Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager expert. He has like more than 11 years of experience in the field of web analytics and has done like 20 plus implementations on GA premium sites. Phil is renowned for his technical skills and the ability to solve business challenges through innovative technological solutions. So thank you so much, Phil, for joining us in this webinar. I will not waste much time and will make Phil the presenter and let him share his knowledge about Google Tag Manager version 2.
Thanks for the introduction, Bhumika. All right, we'll jump straight in. So the things we're going to go through today over the next sort of hour or so, I'll look at the differences between GTM V1 and V2. Then I'm going to do a walkthrough of the kind of workflow for triggers, which is a key difference. And also we're going to do a live kind of upgrade or a manual upgrade of an existing account from V1 to V2 and kind of go through the things to kind of watch out for. And then I'll cover some sort of tips and tricks and things to kind of check or test before sort of upgrading. And then obviously we've got about 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. I'm on more than 5 implementations now. I've done quite a few, so a lot of learnings on when using the V1 interface, and a lot of things that I've kind of found out the hard way as to what not to do. So please kind of ask questions at the end if you have any things you're not sure about. Oops. So we're going to jump into the differences between the V1 and the V2 interface. A couple of things. So the first one is that the names of two aspects have changed. So they are macros and variables. The actual function of what they do is the same, but they're just what you call them now is different. There's a couple of new features, and also the workflow for adding tags such as auto event tags has changed significantly. So here's an example. So macros are now variables. I quite like this change because kind of coming from a sort of Excel background, the first thing I think of when I think of a macro is something that does stuff, whereas in fact it's closer to like a cell in Excel or a kind of a field. So kind of that change makes a lot of sense to me. And then changing rules to triggers, again, kind of much of the same, and that's just it's something that does stuff. So that's pretty kind of intuitive, but it's still the case that a tag is controlled by a trigger and a trigger is controlled by a variable. But if I accidentally say the word macro during this presentation, it's just because I'm so used to kind of saying macros rather than variables. I'm still trying to kind of remove that from my brain in terms of what I call stuff, and the same with rules and triggers. If I say that interchangeably, that's what I mean. Okay, so there are a couple of new features that have been added in GTM V2, or the V2 interface. There's actually now a container ID, which is a default macro. Before you actually had to use a custom script to work out what your container ID was. Container ID is the GTM-XXX sort of bit that you see when you're installing the Google Tag Manager code. So that's nice. So we don't need to use anything custom to grab that now. And that's especially helpful when you're running a dev and live environment where you need to automatically separate out these the two sort of containers. So the logic works differently on when the container ID is a live container versus a dev container. So even now, if you've got custom HTML or JavaScript macros disabled, you can still use that function, which is really cool. The other kind of change is just more of a minor one. Element IDs have now been split into two, so they're now click IDs and form IDs. In most instances, you're just really going to use click IDs and the kind of the click name something, but this is just so you know that they are broken into 2 bits now, and you can kind of see those two in the new interface. And also you can see that container ID sort of tick box within there, so that's cool. Should be straightforward. Also, a couple of a new feature as well that's been added. When you add a new, say, data layer variable, there's now the ability to override both the default of that variable. So you can actually, if you tick that box that says sort of set default, you'll see a field that appears that allows you to reference a macro. So you can actually change what a variable does. So say you have a default, or say you have a variable such as a virtual page view, and previously you couldn't easily change the logic of what that does. Now you can, using the kind of default set of features, and also you can actually change what the name of a macro is using that new function. So in the old interface there wasn't the ability to do that, so that's just a nice kind of minor kind of new thing. And also the big kind of change is the auto events kind of workflow, which they've previously had to create separate modules for like linked listeners and timers and like Ajax kind of tracking. Now they've combined that into a kind of a nice kind of easier to use flow. So in this example, you can see in this workflow one, there's a Google Analytics tag, which is either universal or classic, and then it's added on all pages, and then there's the configurations of the tag, and so that's all kind of done within one kind of sort of list, rather than having to go and create a separate like module for a linked listener, then add the tag, and also create the trigger or rule separately. So that's good, and we'll do a live example of that in a second. A couple of things. What's not changed is the actual container snippet is exactly the same. So this is just a UI change. The actual the kind of JavaScript sort of functionality of what it's doing behind the scenes is exactly identical. The same with the actual data layer itself. That's going to remain unchanged with this upgrade. It's just how you use it which is different. So don't panic about like the V2 interface or the V2 upgrade. It is just a kind of sort of a screen kind of change. It's not a functionality sort of change. Cool. And also, if you are upgrading things like custom HTML, so say you're using things like jQuery listeners, those also just nicely kind of carry across, so you don't need to worry sort of, as much about sort of migration from those aspects. So that's good. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into the interface now. So bear with me a moment, and I'll just do a walkthrough. The first thing, oops, I'm just going to drag this other screen across, so hopefully you should be able to see my screen now. So the first thing I want to sort of mention, so this is the old V1 interface, and when you create a new account for the first time in V1, you get these default sort of macros. So you've got obviously the URL and the path and the host name, and then these kind of auto event elements. And the same, you get one rule that's present, that's an all pages rule, and obviously there are no tags. So if you do the same thing and you create a brand new account within the new interface, you still get some of these macros or variables shown. They're just shown slightly differently. So here's exactly the same thing in the new interface, where I've just created an empty account, and you see that it's got these five elements sort of enabled. So that these two are in effect exactly the same thing. It's just visually they're different, but it's significantly easier to kind of turn on defaults now, because I just go tick, 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 whereas previously I'd have to go, create new macro and then select whatever sort of macro that I wanted to enable. So so that's a good thing, that it's easier to turn those defaults on. So personally, I would like them to expand out some of the defaults. So there's not currently a default for click path, which would be nice. And personally, I'd quite like it if the hostname field, like page hostname, had the ability to turn on non-dub kind of removal. But hopefully they'll add that in maybe in the next kind of iteration. So far it should be just kind of you're doing exactly the same thing. It's just looks prettier. So, okay. The next thing I need to we'll do is, oops, I'm just going to change over. So I've got so I'm just going to go through a process now of actually adding a new tag in the interface. So within this empty account, I'm just going to create a new click listener, just so you can see how this workflow operates. So I'm just going to click a new tag. I'm going to choose a Google Analytics tag, and I'm going to choose universal. And then I'm actually going to, instead of a page view tag, I'm going to select a click type, which is this means that it's going to be triggered based off someone clicking on a link or clicking actually within the page. I'm going to set this as a link click for the moment, and I'm just going to, for simplicity, I'm going to turn off the default for check validation, just because when I just to simplify, you'll notice when I turn those two off, it then jumps straight onto a kind of all pages sort of rule. So, for instance, it doesn't say that I need to enable that on certain pages. So previously you had to create a module, and then you'd say, where do you want this link listener enabled? So you say, okay, I want this fired on all pages, as an example. But now you don't need to do that with some of these aspects, because it's automatically allowing you to sort of say, I want this triggered on all pages or all clicks in this example. So that's good. Obviously, you do need to be slightly careful, or try and if you don't need to trigger a link listener on all pages, then don't, but it's now safer to enable link listeners and click listeners. If I do the same thing for a click listener, it just jumps straight on to all clicks by default. Just as a sort of, so you know, the reason why when I sort of tick these wait for tags and the check validation, why it's kind of asked me, am I sure, or which pages I want to trigger these on, is in some older browsers, such as Internet Explorer, you have to be double check that they are working with link listeners. So that's the reason why it asks you for link listeners, but on click listeners it doesn't. So I'm just going to turn off those default for the moment and just set it on all pages. Okay, and I'm also just going to call this a universal analytics tag, and I'm going to use this as a PDF tracking one as an example. So I'll go PDF download, and I'm just going to randomly just create an account ID for speed here, and I'll leave all the other settings as they are. So this one, I think I forgot to do actually here is I need to actually go into the link click itself and sort of adjust that so it works as a PDF tracking. In fact, just for simplicity, I'm going to change it to an all click. Actually, just PDF download. Yeah, the other thing you'll notice about changing rules and triggers within the new interface is it's a little bit trickier to change a trigger once it's been created. So I've got to go into a trigger now and actually update it to make it that's a PDF link, which hopefully will make easier. So I'm going to change this to far on. Whoops. Link click and clicks. So for instance, I'm going to say page URL ends with .pdf as an example. Okay, so that trigger is now going to fire on all PDF links where the URL ends with .pdf. Okay, so that's how easy it is to create a Google Analytics tag within the new interface. I could probably do the same thing on a link listener, but just so you know, in order to kind of edit a link within the, or edit a trigger within in the interface, you can't do that within the tag now, just to make that sort of clear. Okay, cool. So that's creating a link within the new interface. I'm now I've created an account which is already set up in the old interface, so I'm just going to jump into that. So I'm just going to flick back to the slides quickly. The other thing you'll notice, obviously, when you you can see that notes are now easily kind of exposed, and you'll see a change history that's now shown when you first log in, which is a nice kind of touch on the new sort of interface. And also the versions is an admin aspects are now kind of easier to see, and also you can kind of it's easier to kind of find the publish button, which is good. So I'm going to jump into this login. So I've actually created an example account which is based off the enhanced e-commerce kind of sort of bootstrap example. Now you can either use this generic login to access this account, or if Google kind of throws an error saying unable to, asking for verification, because turns out if you are trying to access a Google account from multiple countries, it doesn't like it. So in that instance, if you can't log in on here, just download these two import files. So it's just bit.ly /old GTM. That's the first one I'm going to use. And then the completed version is the new interface. In fact, if I put them into the chat window, then you can sort of click on those. Okay, so hopefully you're able to log in, or you're able to download that file. That's going to take you to a Dropbox link, which will go to a JSON file. The reason why I'm providing this is just so you can kind of see what I'm seeing. So with that file, all you need to do is import that into the old interface. So you just need to kind of click kind of download on Dropbox, and then you need to go into create a new account in the old interface if you wanted to see this example, and then you need to import that old account on overwrite mode, so you'd be able to kind of see what I'm saying. So that first account, the kind of the old GTM one, is a pre-configured container. So this one, you'll see that it's got the existing auto event kind of tags for both a click listener and a history listener, a form submit, error tracking, link tracking, and a timer or heartbeat. So all these module aspects which are part of the old UI are enabled, and then I've got some other aspects that are present within here. And the macros that are also present in this existing example account. You'll also notice in this example there's a JavaScript macro for capturing the container ID, which I'm just using here. I'm going to switch this over to the new one. Normally, as I said, I would have a separate live and staging environment, or live and dev when I'm working on accounts, just to reduce the chance of stuff actually accidentally getting published to live. And in this example container, I've just set up an account. It may say, when you import it, it may say 1-2 as an example. You can change that, so and also the way that this is configured is it will try the first lookup table, then it will go to the next one, third one, fourth one, etc., and it will fall back to a live account. So that's just how the logic is configured within this example account. So here's my existing account. Say I want to migrate this to the new interface. So how do I go about doing that? So the first thing I need to do is obviously ideally do create version, and it's going to do a snapshot of what I'm currently doing. I'd personally recommend just renaming that, saying, you know, upgrade. Oops. Okay, and then normally you would go about exporting this version. So I'm going to version 10, download, and then importing that into the new interface. So I'm going to jump across into, I'm actually in an empty account at the moment, so I'm going to import this into this empty account. So this is under admin, and then import. Good thing about the V2 interface is it actually creates an empty container when you start from the beginning, which is good. So it's actually it's going to be creating V2, which is helpful. So I'm going to import that old container, import container, and I just downloaded that, and it was just happened to be called V10. So I'm actually going to import this on overwrite mode, which is going to you can flush out any existing sort of settings. So where previously it had a couple of default macros enabled, you'll see those get turned off when I import it. So it's going to do an exact copy of the old interface, moved across into the new one. Because there's some default macros, variables in this one, you'll see that it's got rid of some of those, and also there's that example tag that I just created, and that one kind of that PDF trigger. So I'm going to sort of confirm that, and I'm happy with this because I'm just doing a clear import. So it's pulled that in, and you'll see that these tags and modules which were present in the old interface are now kind of pulled across. So this event timer, etc., is now all present. Now in theory, if I publish this and this version, it would work identically to how the old version sort of works. But obviously, bear in mind the account ID here is different because I'm creating this new version. We're still waiting for the ability to press a button to migrate. At the moment, there's only the ability to manually migrate, which is what I'm doing here. So just bear in mind the account ID I'm using here is different to my current version. But if you ever want to kind of test the migration process first before actually migrating, this is a good way of doing it, because you can potentially roll back sort of using this method. Okay, so the big thing you'll notice when I've done this import is the default variables are now turned off. So previously you saw that it was page URL was sort of ticked, and event and etc. was ticked. Now these are all turned off, and also you'll see that these default settings are now, or these existing sort of macros are all present. If I now want to combine my existing defaults with my new macros, what I've actually got to do is I've got to rename these, and these need to be renamed exactly as the default names because it is case sensitive. So taking the example of page URL, I've got a URL down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and rename this URL. So I'm actually going to call it page URL. So bear in mind this is case sensitive, so it needs to be exactly that, and then I'm going to save it. And because all the default macros are turned off, what I can now do is I can tick the box to turn on the default, and I actually need to set this as overwrite. What it's now going to do is it's going to blend those two together. So it's now enabled that page URL, and it's at the same time deleted the variable called URL. And that's now, any references to that have also been combined. And to prove that, if I try and turn this off, it's going to say function is right now called within these other tags, so it proved that it worked. Now, I do need to go through that process and rename all of these existing sort of tags so they are exactly the same as the defaults, and then tick all of these boxes and sort of go through that process. But obviously, to save time, I've done that already. So here's one I prepared earlier, which is the other account. Oops, 21. I think it might be the other one. Okay, here's the other one. There's two ways of switching between containers. You can either select them here or use the search box on the top right. Yeah, so this one is the other link that I provided, which is the pre-configured one where all of these boxes are now ticked, and it's all nice and kind of tidy with when using default variables. The other thing that I would need to do as well here is where I had that lookup. So in this example, for this tag that this macro that got migrated across, I don't actually need to use this function. So what I'd need to do here in that imported container, I can remove that function and use the default one now. So what I mean by that is, so I've ticked the box to turn on the container ID, and then I'm going to change the reference to that. If I tried to delete this function without removing the reference, this one here, it probably won't let me do it. And to prove that, I'm going to press delete, and it should give me a warning saying this is referenced already, so you can't delete it yet. But if I go in and now change this lookup, so previously it was using a JavaScript macro to get the container ID. I'm going to change that to use this default and save that. And now it will let me delete the JavaScript macro, which is no longer necessary because it's a default sort of function. Cool. So that's now nice and tidy. So my lookup is now referencing a container ID, and then that's doing a sort of nested lookup to look up host names, whether it's debug mode, and whether there's a data layer function for if the user's logged in. So that's all working, and then that would then migrate into and then you could see that within when you've having manually migrated in the interface. So what's not been updated during this process is all of the triggers. So in the old interface, even if I flick back to the account that I've just imported, you'll notice that these triggers, such as the timer and the link listener, are still all present. So although the new interface displays these in a different way, they haven't been kind of combined. So there's a need to go through my triggers and unfortunately kind of manually sort of tidy these up. So I'm going to do that in a moment. Just before I do, I'm going to flick back to the slides. The other thing I was going to mention, the functionality in terms of the number of variables and the number of template tags is exactly the same. They've just been changed to make them a little bit easier to kind of see. So here you've got variables. So you've still got your first-party cookie and your data layer variable and the lookup table, etc. They're just a little bit cleaner kind of to select. And then obviously there's the workflow for creating a Google Analytics tag, etc. The other thing that is now kind of nicely handled in the new interface as well is you may have previously had instances of where you needed to change when a tag triggered within a page. So what I mean by this is your normal page view tags you want it to fire as soon as possible, but if you are either using JavaScript macros or you're using anything that was inspecting the DOM or running any custom functions, you may need to wait for those the kind of data to be exposed before sort of invoking those tags, or of using like things like mouse tracking or potentially kind of IP lookups, etc., there you'd have to change it to run on very slightly after the page is initialized. So it'd be a GTM DOM ready or window loaded, which would be like at the end of the page. So in the new interface, it's now easier to set that because most users wouldn't necessarily know what the name of GTM.DOM is or GTM.load. So you can now just click that as a drop-down box. Obviously, it's going to default to the load it as soon as possible, but it's easier to adjust that now. To see that working, if I go into triggers for this example account that I've imported, so in the old interface, I had this all pages sort of rule, which was triggering on DOM ready. It's now kind of nicely imported that into this kind of setting-based kind of drop-down, which is significantly easier to use. But it does realise that this falls into this field, so I don't need to edit or adjust this particular sort of tag sort of too much. Although I could actually probably set it to all pages rather than the all page rule on that one. So, but that otherwise looks good. The other thing you'll notice is when you sort of change a tag to something like DOM ready, previously it will show in the triggers as grey in the new interface. When you switch over to a new sort of to the new interface, the colours of stuff kind of change. So, for instance, on that DOM ready one, okay, so that's just let's find a slightly better example. Let's do my page view tag actually. So bear in mind the all pages rule is actually no longer needed anymore. It's actually a kind of hidden rule that you don't actually see. So what I'll do is on my all pages rule, so you'll see on here on the page view is actually currently sort of blue, and I'm going to change this to use all pages as the kind of hidden sort of function. Wait for it to load. Or sort of hidden sort of rule. Okay, so yeah, you can see it's currently using a rule that's been imported called all pages, but I can now change this to the all pages default one and remove the other one, and then it's using a kind of a native sort of rule. So it doesn't automatically combine that, which would be nice, but on the manual upgrades. So, whoops, I'm just going to save that. So, so my page view tag now, you see it's gone from, it was blue and it's now green. So you can kind of quickly see when it's using a sort of a native auto event rule, and when it's just an imported rule. For instance, if I flick over to the same account here, you can see that the auto events are in light blue, the history listeners are in purple, and there's the all pages rule in green. So and that one is data layer sort of rule. Actually, the script error, that's a native rule as well, although the colour of it doesn't actually change at the moment. So I'm just going to flick back to the slides again. Current slide. So feel free to have a look at those two examples where I've manually migrated the old interface to the new one. And I've gone through the process of manually upgrading. Now, if you want to kind of test this on your own site, what you can do is you can inject GTM onto a page. So how you do that? I'm going to use the enhanced e-commerce page as a demo. So I'm going to do a search for on Chrome for, so I'm using Chrome here for a tag injector. So if you just search for Chrome tag injector, this allows me to add GTM onto a page just within my browser. So it means I can test stuff before pushing it to live. this one I've actually probably added already, but I'm just going to click out again. Bear in mind on this example, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to enable GTM on a site that's already got GTM enabled on here, because I'm using this in enhanced e-commerce demo site. So it's as a rule of thumb, it's not recommended to add GTM twice to a page, but because I'm just doing this in the browser for demo purposes, it's fine. So I've now got this plugin installed, and it's going to say what account ID do I want to use to inject onto this page. So so you can see that this page currently has an existing GTM account, which is LZ, and it's got a -8 Google Analytics account ID that's present. I'm going to go back to this empty container that I've imported, and I'm going to add this account ID within here. So I'm just going to grab that one and just copy that to Notepad. And also, I'm just going to do a create version and preview this, just so I can make sure it's running in debug mode. Oops. Versions. So bear in mind the button to create preview is also moved. So you're now going to click the drop down, then click create preview, and you can also accidentally press the button to publish to live, which is generally recommended to click create version and preview first before publishing, because you obviously want to test it before pushing it to live. So I'm just going to click create version and preview. Oops. So it's going to drop a cookie in my browser that's going to load GTM in this particular version of this snapshot. So it's currently running in version 2, which is, what was it, version 3? Version 3. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to go over to, currently on this enhanced e-commerce store, it's not injecting anything. I'm going to turn on this injector, which is going to add this account ID, and you'll see that it's going to say version 3 is now active. I need to just refresh this page. Yeah. Oops. Try that again. Okay. Sorry, it's still refreshing there. And yeah, so you can tell this is my own account, because if I click on this page view, as an example, and I know that that's my account ID that I'm pushing in, or if I now click on the debugger, this is Tag Assistant, which is also extremely helpful for debugging. You can see that it's injected my account ID onto this page, which is the TX one, and it's also injecting my example Google Analytics account, which I know is mine because I've got a -2 on there. What I'm actually doing is I'm pushing dev traffic into -2 and then live traffic into -1. So if I actually turned off debug mode, I'd see that actually switch to -1. Okay, and I'd also see that data sort of pushed in on real time as I've just done that sort of page impression. So for instance, this is my hit coming through here. Just to prove it, I just haven't checked if there's a 404 page on here, so let's see if I know, which doesn't have any. Okay. Yes, so there is a test coming through. Okay, and so that will probably show in a second. Although the track page is still on the home page. Okay, and yes, in fact, it's showing great. So I can prove that it's working both by using the debugger in real time to check my version before sort of publishing. Okay, and I'm now going to just jump sort of back to the slides. So obviously the reason why it's not recommended to add GTM onto a page and inject it at the moment, this account itself has GTM.JavaScript that's present in here, which is potentially also firing auto events with the default data layer name, and this plugin is also injecting stuff with the same kind of data layer name. So that's why ideally it'd be helpful if the injector was able to separate out a different data layer name, because that would avoid the chance of any kind of overlaps kind of when sort of debugging. Currently I don't have the ability to change that within the setting, but you can see that the information is being added onto the page from both the things that I'm injecting. So for instance, that timer is active, and you can see it sort of loaded in here. Yeah, so that was the existing sort of timer sort of module, which sort of triggers something. So I haven't actually changed over the timer one yet, which I will do so. I'm just going to current slide. Okay, so I appreciate I've gone through that quite quickly, but you can always kind of watch the replays of this webinar to sort of catch that. Also bearing in mind that I've got the JavaScript error listener also enabled, which I happen to have imported. Whoops. Down here, so that if there are any kind of JavaScript errors, they will also get detected and sort of pushed in. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to change an existing tag from a V1 tag over to a V2. So you saw that currently on this example sort of page, it's injecting a listener for a set timeout, which is this one, which is called a module, of which adds the timer, and that timer is then adding a sort of a page view after a period of time if it's a landing page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to combine that. So bear in mind this is a manual process, which is a bit annoying at the moment, but I'm going to find that timer sort of tag. It's actually called heartbeat after 20 seconds is the tag. So it's currently being fired by an event, which is then being fired by a V1 sort of listener. And when it loads, you'll see what I mean. Just wait for that to hurry up. So in this one you can see this is actually an event that says GTM.timer. So this is a V1 event, and also the reason why you're probably wondering why is the debugger kind of popping up on the screen. This particular debugger actually has a GTM element to every page, so I've actually got to kind of pause this in order to turn that off. And also, annoyingly, when I try and import I have to actually also turn this off because it conflicts with an import button at the moment. But so I'm just going to remove that for the moment, just temporarily, just so you can see the whole of my screen. And while that's loading, so I'm just going to convert this particular tag over to use a native kind of timer. So it's, as I said, it's currently using an event which is a set timer, which is this event. So it's actually firing if the referral is not itself. So you can see that within there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just edit that rule. As I can't edit rules within tags, I've got to find that particular tag. And we'll switch over to a V2 sort of tag. So it's this one, which is an event timer. So you can see that it's still got the settings of referral hostname, which were imported, and it's managed to. I'm actually in the new interface. I must have jumped into that by accident. Hold on. Container tags. Yeah, so it's this one, as I said. So I'm going to go in and just edit this this tag. So you saw basically the answer to the question just there. So that's how it should have looked, and I'm just going to change it over to the new way. So you see it saying custom event here, it's not saying timer. So I'm actually going to change this to timer. Bear in mind I've got on here my settings at the moment are hold on. Yeah, so I'm just going to set this as a timer, and bear in mind, from my other tag I know that I'm actually waiting 20 seconds for the timer, which is 200 milliseconds, and I only want to fire this once on the landing page. So that's the bit I'm going to sort of copy across. So you can see that same information in the older interface. You can see it was here, so I'm just going to manually add that over. Cool, and the other settings are the same. Now, I mean, potentially you could maybe sort of rename that tag to say that you've migrated it. So, for instance, it doesn't hurt to just put like you know, a done in front of it or something, or a way of differentiating your tags with it sorting alphabetically. And yeah, so now we'll go back to that timer tag. This one, you can see it's got the word done on there, so I know that has been updated. So it's using the default kind of timer. Oops. Which is in here. So great. So that one's done. Now potentially I can delete that unnecessary kind of timer sort of function, which is here. As it's no longer kind of referenced. So, and you can check to see if a tag is referenced by, there's a little integer next to these tags. So for instance, this all pages one is not referenced anywhere. These other ones are referenced elsewhere. Okay, so that's a kind of a whiz through of a manual kind of upgrade. And so what things can not happen correctly, or things to kind of look out for. Obviously when you're renaming variables, it is case sensitive, so if you put the word page URL and you put lowercase URL, it won't blend those two together. Also be careful that you don't accidentally add a trigger twice. So if you've got like a link listener or an event that's firing on a link listener, and you add a native link listener and you've already got an existing one, a V1 imported listener, then there is a chance that those would both fire. So that's why you need to kind of preview stuff and debug it. So first. Also, I've had issues when migrating a kind of all-page blocking rule where it doesn't always quite seem to work perfectly. What I mean by that is on here, there's not the ability to pause tags, so I actually go in and create the inverse of an all-pages rule, which I just use for turning stuff off. So this one here, I add this. So for instance, there's some scripts down here which I'm not currently sort of enabling. So I use a blocking rule to turn them off. But this particular rule of fire on all URLs, which has a kind of hidden event, which is in effect doing this. Whoops, in lowercase. I personally find that when I import these ones over, I've had a sort of couple of issues. So I actually update that to use. Oops, I'm going to flip back. Triggers. Yeah, so I actually changed this one so it's on that empty account containers. So you can see this is what it's imported, which is just doing on all pages sort of rule, which in effect has a kind of, it has also got the GTM.JavaScript bit. I personally switch these over to use an event and just fire on all kind of events or any event, because then in effect, if it's gtm.javascript, gtm.dom or so GTM loaded, it will always be prevented. So hopefully that would be sort of, fixed in next iterations. The other one as well, bearing in mind that there's not currently the ability to automatically there may not be the ability to reverse a migration, so I would actually recommend doing what I've just done now, which is do a manual migration first to see how stuff performs before migrating, just because if you ever need to kind of roll to cancel stuff, you may not potentially be able to do that if and when an auto migrate button kind of appears. So always good to kind of test stuff in a safe environment first, which leads me on nicely. It's good to have a QA environment to test stuff as well. By all means, here's an example of a QA environment I use, where I've got, say, an account ID that's present on here, where I would just go in and change this to the new V2 sort of account ID, and then I can kind of test certain functions to make sure they work exactly identically. And also, it means that I can import data out via the API from my kind of clone of an account and compare that with my my live kind of V1 account. So that's helpful to do. And also just general training into how to use GTM is extremely advantageous, because it reduces the chance that you're going to make kind of human errors when using the tool. For example, in the new interface, it's quite easy to just press the publish button. For instance, on this empty container, you'll see if I go publish, bang, it doesn't give me a warning saying, are you sure you want to publish? Whereas if I do the same thing on this existing one, and go bang, it's saying, are you sure you want to publish? Yes. So just be slightly careful about that. And current slide, and also try and kind of plan for how you're going to roll out an implementation. You could do it in stages potentially, although bearing in mind that if you've got everything within one account, then that may be all migrated in sort of one go. So you'd have to create a separate account in order to do separate sort of migrations. But there is the possibility you could sort of stagger it. But you definitely worthwhile kind of planning stuff. Also, I'd kind of suggest maybe it's not always advantageous to be the first to migrate, so maybe wait for some other people to kind of try it first. But there is this automatic migration process that will happen in sort of 2 to 3 months' time once the manual approval is available, and that's sort of publicly being stated. So last couple of things, there's a really helpful developer guide that I wrote, which is linked to there. One thing I just ask as an action from this as a webinar is if you could please just jump into the GTM community and subscribe to that. We also have a section now within that for getting feedback on the new UI upgrade process, just to make sure it kind of goes sort of perfectly. And here's an example of these kind of training videos. These are all free. This is, if you do a search for GTM playlist, you'll see these, and some very good learnings within there. So, and I now have about 5 minutes left for Q&A. So it's that one. So I'm going to jump over current slide. Oh, and last thing, quick quiz, which by all means there's a couple of things on here. So, quick question: does manually upgrading affect the GTM account ID snippet? So feel free to kind of put these answers in the Q&A or in the chat box. The short answer to that is manually upgrading at the moment, you have to change the account ID over to upgrade. When the automatic version is available, you won't need to do that. So that's a key difference and a reason to wait for the upgrade button to potentially appear. And also, if you ever want to kind of compare two versions, you can potentially sort of run them side by side by injecting them, as I've just demonstrated, and then looking at the data that sort of comes through. And if you, an example of one of the mistakes that I'd recommend is to do some basic training and testing. The more testing you're doing, the less chance that you'll accidentally kind of roll out things that are not working correctly. And the question that I've been asked is, what happens if you do nothing? Well, in theory, it should all work. So there's no kind of harm that potentially can come. This is the theory bit. The bigger problem is going to be in terms of maintenance going forward, because you're now going to have lots of legacy aspects that may be shown, and it may be harder to manage sort of long term. And so there is a possible recommended way of improving, of someone just going in and auditing an account, or there may be API tools that come in and improve the audit process sort of later on. So there's currently no harm to kind of wait, but there's there potentially is benefits in doing training to at least you're not kind of used to using the old interface and suddenly switched over to the new one and not knowing where stuff is, or you accidentally enable a trigger or enable a tag without realizing, or something along those lines. So a couple of handy little tip as well. This is a new feature that you can now enable, which is the ability to get improved organic CTR by injecting code via GTM. There's some details of that within these slides. It means that if you you can actually show like a Google Plus and a Twitter kind of link on the search engine results. Quick example here is if I search for USwitch on here, they're actually using this JavaScript kind of method of adding. They were. Let's try that again. Here you go. So you see that Twitter logo is added. So that's actually been added via JavaScript, and potentially could be added via GTM. So Twitter buttons, other buttons can also be enabled, and you can also change your brand logo using that method. So that kind of leads me on nicely to a forthcoming webinar, which Bhumika will announce regarding how to improve your SEO. So if you ever want to kind of reach out to me for any questions, you've got my Twitter handle there, or I'm quite active in the Google Tag Manager community, and there's a link to some slides I've done for sort of further reading, and hope that's been helpful. I have gone through stuff quite quickly because we're kind of short on time here, but feel free to give me any feedback, and I hope you found that helpful and useful. So I'm just going to hand over to Bhumika for to announce the next slide.
Thank you so much, Phil, for sharing your knowledge about Google Tag Manager version 2. I'm sure this will definitely help our audience to gel up with the new version of Google Tag Manager. As we are running out of time, we'll be answering the remaining questions via email. I would quickly want to announce about our next webinar, which is about how to use Google Analytics to drive SEO benefits, which would be held on 31st March 2015 with Alexander Hall. You can use the link below to register to our next webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Phil, for joining us. It was a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for inviting me.